Hi, it's Ray from ProShaper Sheet Metal in Charlton, Mass. And we're on panel 10, and this is video 10B on the 62 E-Type Bonnet, all aluminum bonnet build. We're building it with flexible shape patterns. Why are we doing that? We could have made a buck. Some people have mentioned, well, you could have made a buck. Well, it'll take a certain amount of time to make a buck. And no matter if you make a buck out of wood, you make it out of wire or whatever, you're going to make some mistakes in it. There's going to be subtle mistakes. The flexible shape pattern is a buck system. It's very easy to do. Generally, I'll use it to make patch panels and stuff, but this is proving that you can use it to make the whole bonnet. Now, would I make one bonnet and make a buck for it? No, that doesn't make sense because it takes a lot of commitment to make a buck. And if you do make the buck, it implies that you're going to have multiples. This allows you to make it without a multiple. I really don't want to make E-type noses. There's so many other people making them. Like I said, there's a half a dozen people making them. So, and the price structure on them, if they're made in anywhere but the United States, the price structure is going to be generally lower because the cost of living is a lot higher in the U.S. So it's very difficult to compete on a price point if you're making copies of this. So my intent is never to make copies of this stuff. My whole intent now at my age is to be creative and make stuff that I really like to do. I love E-type Jags. An all aluminum E-type Jag, that would be something I definitely would want to do, an E-type lightweight. But that's not the intent here. It might come into play later on. I don't know if the E-type lightweight aluminum noses are the exact same thing as the steel noses. I don't know that fact. I would have to do the research on it. But there are so many other cars besides the Jaguars. I have 6 projects that the students are making. Those are all on the front burner. They all have to be finished before I take on any other major commitments. We had a 10-week hiatus. I had a really bad case of bronchitis. Still coughing a little bit every day, but I'm getting better. So this was the first panel that we did since I came back last week, and we just got a good start on it. It's a lot of subtle features on this panel. You have a little bit, a tiny bit of crown in here and roll in here, and you have a reverse curve valley that has a curve. This is the same curve that starts here and goes all the way to the back. And getting that reverse curve subtlety in there in the proper position is a difficult little task. So this panel is not a really super hard one, but it's not a slam dunk either. This one turned out to be a little tricky bugger. So tonight what we want to do is try to tune this a little bit, and a lot of it's going to be on the fulcrum block on the post dolly over here. You saw that a little bit. It's not going to, this video is not going to be a oh wow moment or anything. It's a subtle panel. So unless you're really hardcore, you probably could tune out right now. We're going to be doing a lot of little subtle stuff. But it's the subtle stuff that makes the difference between a great panel and an okay panel. So we've got all these gauges made up. Market made the gauges. These are all made from the original panel. And the flexible shape pattern locates where the gauge is supposed to be. I'm just reiterating here a little bit. The holes punched where the gauges were on the original Jaguar bonnet. These holes allow you to put these little index marks here. So this is gauge 46. Every gauge has an index point. Every gauge has a number. So this is 46. I go to the index point and I see that I'm wrong. It's not perfect yet. This has to have a roll in here. That doesn't mean there's a crown. That's more of a roll, because when you run it this way, it's almost supposed to be dead flat. Now this is all going to be louvered in here eventually, So that's all going to go away with the louvers. But that said, we have to get it right now. So if we look closely here, if we put this on the index mark, right here, I did some of this last week too, I have to move this valley. So basically you got to use the slapper and the fulcrum block and just slap the metal. You're not going to do any stretching, you're rearranging it. So we got to move the position of that valley this way a little bit, and then this whole part here has to come up like this, and it needs more roll this way. Now as far as the crown this way, we don't have a gauge going down here, and we might make a gauge here so we can get an indicator of what that crown is supposed to be right in between the edge and the valley. We probably should have done that. Now, this is a nice feature about using a flexible shape pattern and the gauges, is that you get to a point where you're a little confused as to what the panel's supposed to be doing. Generally, it's all information. The more information you have about that surface, the easier the problem is to solve. So if you have a wood station buck, and I've seen all different types of wood station bucks, a lot of people will put the stations, 8 to 10 inches apart or so, and that would be equivalent to this, and there might be one right here, but there might not be anything in here at all. So you're basically lacking in a lot of information. Also, in a wood station buck, you don't have the ability to clamp so well, and you don't have the ability to see how things are fitting. In this case here, it's a station buck. It's very similar to a wood station buck, except we're using the stations one at a time rather than already in a matrix all screwed and glued together. So we need to know what this curve is supposed to be right here, and somebody on the questions and comments on YouTube, he probably hasn't watched the other video where I showed how to make one of these gauges, so I'm going to redo that again. Since we need a gauge, let's make it on camera again, and we'll make this cardboard gauge. Number one, this cardboard is great stuff. If you live in the US, there's a company called Uline. I buy the cardboard from them. If you get an old refrigerator box or something, it might work, but it's generally all bent up. This comes really nice and flat. It's super strong. It's one ply. It's lightweight, easy to cut. So it has all the nice features that you want. So what we got to do is we'll put the flexible shape pattern back on the panel and on the original panel, and we did have this cut out for the louvers, but I think we can make it work because we're asking about information over here, and we're going to lay out a new line here, and we're going to try to get that information right in the center of where the edge is and the valley, somewhere right in here. Alright, I put the flexible shape pattern back on. I've got a little tape here and I'm just holding it on the edge. It's indexed in proper, and like I said, we want to catch the crown right in this roll right here. So I'm just going to eyeball this a little bit about the center, and let's see, we'll put a black line like all the others and run our marker right down here like this, and then we're going to put an index line in. So that's our index there, and this is going to be number 53, I think. 53 is there, 54. So that's gauge 54, and we got that marked. And now the job is, this thickness of this tape is only a few thousand, so it's not really going to upset anything. So now we're going to take that piece of cardboard. I like to use the white side. The brown side's okay, but this white is really nice. So that is neither of these edges are straight. This has been cut before with a razor, but it doesn't matter. So the trick here is, on this case, what I do is just take a regular Sharpie. This is actually a Milwaukee. I'll put that right in, that's the rock point. I'll kind of stabilize it. And I'll put this like this. And I'll go like this. Yeah, that ended up with a nice curve, if you can see that line. So that gives us a starting point. I'll put a little F here for front so I don't get confused. And then we're going to cut that with a razor blade. I got the razor blade, and you want to always cut on wood. You don't want to cut on any other surface. You'll kill the razor blade real quick. So this has some screws in. I got to make sure I don't hit the screws. So I'm going to take that and then just run it right down my line. Always use a fresh blade. The blades are super cheap. And you generally have to score it twice. And this comment, which is brought up I think before, and we have a few times we've shown probably how to make these gauges in the prior videos, but it's a really good question, and I always encourage good questions. So I told Mark just a minute ago, I says, you know, we should make a video on just how to make a flexible shape pattern in gauges. Now in this case it was pretty easy because all you have to do is run the pen like I just did. But if you have a situation where you have a big crown like this, what I generally do is I just use my mind's eye and I kind of just reproduce that line of the crown and then cut that out and then put it on, and then you can fine-tune it with the pen. So it's a 2 or 3 step process. Now in this case here, and I usually like to make the gauges the same length as whatever the flexible shape pattern is. So I'm going to knock this off over here, and I'm going to put my index mark in. My index mark is right there. So, and you always want your index mark on both sides. And then I want to label it. This is number 54. Both sides too, because if you're picking it up off the bench, you don't want to keep flipping it. So there we go. Now it's a wide gap here. We got about a 3/16 gap here, so we have to knock these ends down. Now let me get some sandpaper and a little grinder, and I'm going to show you how to do those ends. So I have a piece of 80 sandpaper. This is hook and loop I use exclusively in the shop. I just tri-fold bend it, and for subtle stuff this will knock it down really quickly. I don't think this is the answer for this one. We might have to grind it. So a little bit of sand in there and see what happened. Oh, actually it's not bad.
Can you say why you're grinding, where you're grinding?
Well, there's a gap from about here to here, so it's touching here, and we want it to touch the whole length. So I just sanded a little bit on the front, now I got to sand a little bit on the back. I brought the 50 grit roll-lock grinder over here, and this will sand it pretty fast, but it might be too fast for this application. So probably not going to use this, but I'll leave it in reserve. Just want to make a little comment. I bought one of these DeWalt's from Home Depot. Awesome. I'm now a DeWalt fan. I was a Husky fan. Prior to that I was a Harbor Freight fan, but this is a really good grinder. Yeah, I know you can buy the Snap-on and the other ones are very expensive, but this was like $79. Really nice grinder. I think they're all made in China anyway, so we'll sand this back end a little bit. Little fuzz here, we'll take that fuzz off, and then we inspect it again. We're going to hold this 90 degrees to the surface on the witness mark. And yeah, we need a bunch more over here. So stand on that end. I used to make these gauges out of steel strips that I would shear that are about 5/8 of an inch wide out of 18 gauge sheet metal steel, and then I would use a shrinker stretcher to make them. That works really good, but no matter what I did, they always seem to rust. These don't rust, and you can write the story on here a lot better. You're going to write your story about what the gauge is for, so you can write E-Type bonnet very easily. When you had that little 5/8 strip, it was difficult to get all that information on there. And these gauges, as long as you don't get them wet, will last years and years. So that's getting really close now. There's a little bit of gap right here. Sand it a little more here. And you get good at it. The gauges shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes to make. So this one might have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 gauges. A couple of them are common to other panels though. So maybe let's say 8 gauges, 5 minutes apiece. So that's 40 minutes to make gauges. And then the flexible shape pattern itself, this size should take you about an hour or so. So an hour and 40 minutes. You get it all marked up. This thing will last 5 years if you hang it up in a dry spot. And you know, it's a really good tool for at least 5 years. So it's actually quite a bargain because it doesn't lie. It's as good as the surface that you're copying. If you're copying damaged material, a damaged hood or a fender or something, then you're going to get damaged information. That's not the case with this. This is a really nice piece. So now, if you go the high-tech method where you're scanning, and you're scanning something that's damaged and has been fixed with Bondo and stuff, you don't know really the history of what you're scanning oftentimes. And some of the cars were made in a hurried fashion when they were made new, and there can be quite a bit of difference between the left and right on a panel. So if you scan it, do you reproduce that difference again? That was always a question I had, because I've worked on cars and found great differences between left and right if they were hand-built car. So to be authentic, do you recreate that asymmetry, or do you try to make it symmetrical? In my mind, I always go by designer's intent. There's no designer of any automobile or anything that wants their ultimate product to be asymmetrical, unless that was part of the design. So try to always do the best you possibly can. Another advantage of this flexible shape pattern is if you work from a center line, you can take and make one side of any car body or fender that's symmetrical, and then you flip them upside down, and all the information is totally symmetrical on the other side. So there's a nice advantage to it. So there's the gauge. That's number 54. The only thing we have left to do, it's all honed in there really nice, is just to cut it off right at the end here. So we mark the ends. And that's just another way of indexing it on. So I'm going to cut that. Now you can use a bandsaw to cut this cardboard also.
No.
Oh, I cut the wrong one. as Mark said, no, I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought he was talking about the bandsaw. I just cut it at the index line rather than the cut line. So we have to make this one over again. Oh, so as you were watching, I cut it on the index mark instead of where I needed to cut off on the end. Mark was yelling, saying, no, I didn't know what he was talking about. Well, it settled in after a bit, and I said, oh, I'm going to have to make that one over again. So I was able just to trace it and cut it and make it again, so it's not a big deal. So there it is, nice fit. And just to see what we got here, let's bring that about approximately the same spot. Not bad, that don't look bad. Now, it's a little weak right here, which might imply that I might have to put a little more area in here. That would be wheeling a little with a little heavier pressure. So we'll get to that. First I want to mark on here that it's the, if you don't mark it, you're going to lose what these gauges are all about. So it's a 1962 Jaguar E-Type nose or bonnet. 1962, both sides. Jaguar bonnet. E-Type. And I've got my index mark, I've got my gauge number on both sides, so now if perchance this migrates to some other bench a week from now and I'm looking for it, I can pick it up and I know exactly what it's for. So you got to spend the time to label it. Then we'll punch a hole in all the corners and we'll put a zip tie through it, and then you can hang it up and then store it, and it'll last a long time. So we have to do the analysis with the gauges. We started showing that a minute ago. Let's start at the front here, number 33, and find out what we got to do with that number 33. Number 33 shows us that we have to move this valley back. We're on the index point, and that valley has to move over that way. So that means I got to put the fulcrum block right in here and then slap this and move that valley. So we always want to quantify everything we do. We put it on the index point, and right now it's starting to migrate off right here. So I'm going to mark that point. So I'm going to slap it with a leather-faced wood slapper, and I'm going to hit it right here on the fulcrum block with the fulcrum block underneath. Then I'll come over here and I'll monitor my result. Now, a key element of this craft is never do anything in excess. It's always baby steps. So I'm just going to hit it 2 or 3 times, maybe 5 times. So I'll get a feel for how much it's moving when I'm hitting it. Then I come over here and I verify. What did I do? Okay. Hopefully that line where it starts to migrate off moves over here. That's what I want to see. So that's what we'll do now. So we can actually take this over, bring the slapper over. And this is all part of that curved valley there, or reverse curve. And if, like some of the people that are doing these as a regular business, making aluminum E-type noses, a lot of them have full surface super reinforced fiberglass or other type of maybe carbon fiber or whatever they use, and they can actually hammer form on it. So they could put this piece on, have a little round wooden block with a leather face on it or something, and they go bang, 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 and in just a matter of minutes they can hammer form that all in, and it's perfect. That sets the arrangement just right. If you're using a wood buck, that's not the case, unless you fill that wood buck in all the way where that valley would be, where that detail is. And sometimes they do that on a wood buck. So I have to hit right here and move that way. So that's another thing, is always double check, because oftentimes you can make the mistake by hitting the wrong side or something, which is not the end of the world, but it's easy just to double check. Now you don't want to hit this so that it makes a little mark. This did make a little mark here, which I'll have to planish out a little bit, but that won't be too bad. If you go at an angle like this, it's more apt to bite in. You want to go the long way like this with that slapper. So we'll put that over this way now, and let's see what result we got here. So now that's a lot better. See, now it's coming off about right here, right there. So we moved about 1 inch, so that actually helped quite a bit. But we got to bring this up though. So let's do a push just with our hands and see what that will yield. Okay, that's a lot better. As you can see how much that improved. So again, patience, patience, patience here. Now you see this tail here is starting to hit, and that has to go this way. So some of that is just arrangement. We got to push it down, but I think it's a little flat in here. We might have to wheel in here a little bit too, and that'll get verified. That if we try to bend it into arrangement and it doesn't go, that's probably telling you that it needs a little bit more area there. The flexible shape pattern will generally tell you if it needs a little more area, but this is really subtle and difficult to read sometimes. So we're going to push this right here without upsetting that. We're going to push right from the valley, and usually the end of the panel is a little easier to adjust, but I'm going to go inboard a little bit too here. You don't want to focus all in one spot. Okay, so we did that. Let's see what that says. And sometimes you can go backwards real quick too. Alright, so that's actually looking a little better right there. But let's see. I got to push right from that point there. Let's see what that one says. So that's following it pretty good. And this, if I rock it, look at that, that's fitting pretty good too. There's a little bit of a gap in here. I've got too much of a radius here. So I'll have to take a little bit of that radius out. It needs to be dulled a little bit. So I'm not going to go any further with that one. I'm going to move down the line a little bit, because I think this needs to move out too, because the light line is showing a little bump right here. So I'm going to check that. We'll go back over to the bench and we'll check number 36. So there's a lot of great information here, but it's really subtle stuff. And one thing you're going to have to learn if you want to learn this craft is there's a lot of subtle stuff in this craft. Alright, so that's true. It verified what I thought. When I put it on the index point, I'm a little tight right here, so I need to move that over a little bit more. So again, it's always confusing as to what direction you need to move it. So let's see, I need to move that this way. So let's bring that number 36 over here. Alright, I got a old school, not an old school, but from a school audio-visual cot. They don't use them in schools anymore. They're great for holding stuff like this. I should have had it anyways, but I got it now, so my slapper won't be falling on the ground. So I want to move this over. Let's slap this way here. Let's see if that made it any better. Yeah, that's a lot better. So I'm going right into that valley, very nice, and then it's starting to come off right here. The line's migrating, and then I got to bring this up right here. So I got to push right from there. The batteries went, we had to reboot. All right, so we're still on 36, and we're going to push right about here. I'm going to try to bring 36 up. Okay, so that's a lot better. Now I don't have 33. I'm going to go get 33 too. But I'm going to push a little bit more here. That's actually looking pretty good. A little more though. Right there. Okay, so that's coming in really nicely now. It's almost there. And we'll check 33. This might be a little overbent now. We'll see. No, it's actually a little underbent, but it's looking good. It's not bad. So let's see. We need to push that up a little bit right there too. I got a little subtle little bump there from when I slapped it before. Maybe I can slap that out a little bit. Yeah, that's a lot better. Try 33 again. And that's really good, except it needs to be pushed up a little more from the valley. Now all of this stuff, if you're working with a wire form or a wood buck or anything other than a full surface, you're going to have to dial in all of these radiuses, fitting it on the buck with no tension. Ultimately, it should just fit on there really nicely. So that's pretty close. You don't have to get to perfection at this point because we're dialing them in. You go right down the line, get them to like at least 70-80% of where they're supposed to be, maybe 90%. Then you go back and you fine-tune them a little bit more. Alright, so that one's looking pretty good too. It just needs a little more right here, meaning I got to just push from the valley here, push that up a little bit. And on the spot, yeah, that's really close. Now 44, we'll get 44, and we'll try 44. Mark's going to get 44. So number 44, we try that one. Alright, 44 is fitting on the index line beautifully. We have a little bit lacking right here, so we'll try pushing it up from this point. Let's see where that, it starts to go off. Actually right in the valley. So the valley up, it needs a little bit. 44 on our spot, and then we're lacking a little bit around this right here, so we got to put that in right there. Like I said, I think I might be a little deficient in area value there. That'll show up later. If you go round and round and round and you can't make things happen, it's probably because you're lacking in the area value in that spot. Okay, so I got to come up a little bit from the valley here. Right there. And that should be, yeah, that's pretty close. So 1, 2, and 3 here, the first 3. Now we got 3 in the back. Number 45 is the next one. And we'll try 45. Now 45 is off a bunch. We put the 45 index point on, and you see it's hitting hard right here. That means we need to move that line over this way a little bit. So that means I'm going to have to slap it here. The light line is off a little bit, I can see it. I'm not supposed to drop it. Worst case, hitting my toe, which I missed. I'm getting pretty good at not hitting my toe. Let's see if that improved it. Number 45. Better, but not there yet. So I've got to move that valley over just a little bit. Right there. So there's my 45. That's looking much better. Now the point where it's coming off is right about here. The index point's way over here. The valley's here. So I've got to push this whole thing up a little bit right there. So I put the fulcrum block right in the valley. Now if I put my hand out here, I'm going to get an exaggerated. You got to put your hands right where they're needed, right where it needs to move. Okay, so we pop that up. Oh, look at that. That's coming really nice. Okay, so we're getting close with them all. Now we need 46. So Mark handed me off 46. It's great making these videos with a helper. You need somebody running the camera to get a good production value. You need somebody helping you with anything you need. This one is off a mile, as you can see. So it looks like I have to move the valley, and I got to get a roll in it here. The roll's done with the wheel. You can do it here too, but I got to move the valley first. So we'll put this here, and we will hit that. If you watch the light line, you can see the light lines going a lot better here. $46. All right, not enough. I got to move that valley over. I'll put the fulcrum block here. Now, a lot of people coming into this craft will see something like this and, oh boy, he's doing it all wrong. There's got to be a way to do it fast. And they think that if you buy a power hammer, you can put the power hammer going and the panel comes out perfect. It doesn't work that way. No matter which way you do it, you've got to take the time. The most efficient method is the hammer forming method for this type of panel. So there's my 46. It still needs to be moved over more. Oh, a lot better. So now I got the valley where I want it. I don't have that crown in it. Let's just try it. We'll see if we can put, not the crown, but the roll. So you can push a little roll in there, subtle roll. That might have did it. No, a little bit, but not enough. And then this is to come up, way up. So we'll take this and push that up now this way here, like that. Whoop, I went too much, so I got to push it back down again a little. So I put it on the fulcrum and push it back a little. No, actually I moved the, looks like the line's got to move a little still, right here. Still have to move that line a little. And a lot of people love the pull max. They think that maybe someone will say, oh, you can make a die and run this through the pull max and you're going to, no, it ain't going to happen. People love the English wheel, including me, and you can't just make this happen in the English wheel either. This is subtle stuff. Now there are a lot of car designs that are a lot easier. Some of them are very difficult. I would put this as that this is a pretty difficult piece. So we're getting a lot closer there. Let's see what number 47 says. 47 is actually looking pretty good. So that just needs a little up push here. The ends are always easier to bend anyway, so push that up a little bit like that. And now we need a little roll in here because we're lacking that roll. So we'll put it in with the wheel. We go over to the wheel. You want to do this on real light pressure. And I'm just pulling down on it. I'm using the wheel as a fulcrum block, inducing this nice little roll in there. Now, there are a few slapper marks and stuff in the valley. The valley's showing a light line. It's got a little squiggle to it. We've got to straighten that out yet. We're still not there. We're getting to the end of the road, but not there yet. Let's see what 46 had that big. Now look at that. That's looking really good now. But we have to push this edge up a little bit more now. But as it gets closer, it's really easy to make the fine tunes now. Before it was way out. Now just from looking at the light line, you want a beautiful, nice flowing light line. The light line's making, it's a couple little divots here from the slapper and stuff, and the light line is wavering a little. So you can feel it, and it's a little fat right in here, so I can slap that down a little bit right there, and that'll clean that light line up a little bit. So let me try that. That's a lot better. And then there's a little funny right in here. I want to straighten that out a little bit. And then one of the problems I have is putting this roll in, and I did it with the wheel. And I have a bunch of little fulcrum mark ripples. And now here's an interesting situation where you have this big diameter top wheel, and that'll go to about here. It's really not the right diameter to work this valley. It will work, but it's not the ideal. Now this valley is going this way, so it's not going to bite on my wide wheel, but it's going to open that up again a little bit, and it's easy to fix it. Now I encounter this problem a lot, and one of the ways I solved the problem was to have a special wheel which I use for reverse curves, and this has got a really small diameter. It's actually one of my lower anvils for my big wheel. I turned it into a top wheel, so it has a little bit of crown on it, so it won't bite on the edges. It's relieved really heavily on the edges, and right now I got a higher crown wheel on it, but let's put a real low crown wheel on there, and that will wheel that out really nicely. So I got a flatter wheel. So I use this wheel almost exclusively for my reverse curve situations. Now every time you use a wheel, you always want to make sure that it's adjusted properly, meaning that the center of the wheel should be interacting right in the center of your top wheel. Your anvil and the top wheel should be hitting right. This isn't right now. It's hitting over here, and I need to adjust it. These are all adjustable anvils. Why it's out, I don't know at the moment here, but I will adjust it. So this side of the anvil cradle has to come up a little bit. I'll have to get a little wrench to do that. So I'll be right back. So my anvil's yokes here, I make them so they're adjustable with a little Allen screw, so I had to turn that just a tiny bit. And now I'm getting a nice contact right in the middle there. So, and then this screw here will lock it. And I will want to clean this up. I haven't cleaned this one up in a while, so I'll show you the cleaning procedure again. We'll back this up a little bit, and we'll get my special little sander. So this is the Harbor Freight little rotary grinder, air grinder. It's as good as it gets. It's a wonderful tool. Some of the Harbor Freight stuff I love, and some of it I don't like. This is one that lasts for years. I tried to oil them, but they don't always get oiled. That's the death of these air tools if you don't oil them enough. And it comes with a thread that's not user-friendly for these common foam pads, which are 5/8 24 thread, 5/16 24 thread, and this is 3/8 24. So we make these little aluminum adapters which allow you to put them on, and they're in my website. They work really nice. So this is a pretty high RPM little sander. You don't have to run at full blast, but it's great for conditioning steel and sanding steel and polishing these wheels. I use a drum sander. You get that. That's a abrasive drums that will fit on this, and it expands. I'm just using the rubber part here to turn the wheel. I do have a video exclusively on cleaning these up, but I just wanted to show it again. So that allows you to spin it. It becomes an English wheel lathe essentially right here. And that's 600 grit paper on here. Alright, so those are all nice and clean. Oftentimes when you're working with aluminum, the aluminum will fleck a little bit and it'll stick right on the wheel, and that'll print. Or if you got gloves on, the gloves will shed and it'll stick on the wheel and it'll print it over and over and over again on your aluminum or steel panels, so you got to be very careful. It's a good idea to constantly keep your wheels clean like that. You get a better finish on your panel. So we got these clean, and we'll try using this wheel. I used to make these wheels about I don't know, 14 years ago or something like that. I'm not making this type of wheel anymore. So this will navigate through that a lot nicer because it's got that smaller diameter. And if you want to smooth this stuff out, you really need to angle it just slightly. If you go straight like this, it will smooth it, but it's more effective if you can get a little angle here. So you just kind of wiggle it through at real low pressure, and it'll smooth a lot of that stuff out. So make sure I got enough pressure. You don't want to pump this up and have too much area value in there, and that'll cause a problem. We're just looking to smooth it right now. Will this be the total answer? I don't know. Until we look at it, we'll find out. So this one will allow me, it's only 18-inch throat or so I can only do about half, and then I'll have to turn it around and go the other way. But you notice I'm always turning it at a little bit of an angle when I go through. And that angle actually helps smooth. If you go too much of an angle, it's a problem. But a little angle is better than no angle. You get a better smoothing action. And I'd call this the light pressure zone. It's just doing a little bit of planishing, not really adding any area. Just the planishing it's doing is an arrangement operation. It's just ironing it out. Alright, so look down there in the light, and that's a lot better. Now this might upset my gauge position, but the panel is now almost trained to where it needs to be, so it'll be a lot easier to adjust this. And I don't know, we're already running really late here on the video, so I don't know if we're going to get this panel finished tonight. So we'll see what we have, and then we're probably going to call it a night, and we'll have to make this 10C where we actually finish the panel up, put the edge on it, and possibly join it with panel 9, a welding operation. So far I've had 2 welding operations in this bonnet build series, and whenever you break out any type of TIG welder or gas welder, man, the opinions start to fly. It's unbelievable. Everybody has a way of doing it, which is fine. But just because you have a way doesn't mean that your way is wrong. Especially if you're getting nice results. I get my welds turn into invisible situations. You don't even know the weld's there, other than a little bit of discoloration. Now, it's hard to make a criticism of those results. The criticism where I'm vulnerable is time. The people that specialize in gas welding aluminum, by far, if they're a really good gas welder, they can gas weld aluminum panels a lot faster than you can TIG weld. That said, there's probably some TIG welders out there, and generally it's the younger guys. Younger guys have really good eyesight, really good non-arthritic hands and everything, and they get that hand-eye coordination down really well, and some of them can really do some beautiful welds, probably better than I'll ever be able to do. My welds, I think, are adequate. They go away. You don't know they're there. I'm not doing stack of dimes or anything like that because I really don't care what the weld looks like until after it's gone, after I've ground it and flattened it down and sanded it or filed it or whatever you're doing to smooth it. But okay, so that's a lot better. There's still a little few ripples down in here. I'm going to do this one more time. But I think I showed a lot in this video tonight. It's not a panel that you are going to go crazy over as far as the beauty of the panel or whatever. It's just a really mundane panel, but it has a lot of nice little subtleties in it, and it's something you have to master. So we've wheeled out this valley, and in doing so I'm sure we upset the position relative to the gauges, and we're going to have to re-push this again, but we shouldn't have to slap it or anything. But I think we're well over an hour now. The next time in 10C we'll set the gauges again. We might even check to make sure we got there's a few little spots that could use a little more pickup here with the wheel. We'll get this fine-tuned a little bit more. So until next week, thanks for watching. It's Ray Schelin. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed, and positive comments and likes are always wanted. And thanks for your time. Ray Schelin.